Hey there, YouTube community. Thanks for tuning in to part 2 of episode 2 of my Skydio and me, titled Likes, Dislikes, and Unlikes. In part 1, I covered a list of the top 4 things that I like the most about the Skydio 2. In part 3, I will be going over a list of the top 4 things that, in my opinion, makes the Skydio 2 unlike every other drone that's out there. Part 2, though, which is this part, is the dislike section. I'll be going over a list of the top 4 things that bother me most, that are frustrating as all get out about the Skydio 2. If you had a list of 4, how would it compare to mine? Why don't you stick around and hear what I have to say, and then you can compare at the end. Comment below. Until then, be back in a sec.
Flying camera outside in the breeze. We're bobbing and dodging round everything with ease. Unconventional invention and adventure. Come and see my Skydio and me.
Okay, before I get started, I wanted to address 2 popular complaints about the Skydio 2 that's actually not on my list. The Skydio 2's not being able to fly at night is not on my list at all. If you like night flying, more power to you. But if you live in a semi-rural environment like I do, or maybe way out in the sticks like where I grew up, there's nothing to film at night except for maybe stars and fireflies. And I don't need a drone to shoot those things. So if you bought a Skydio 2 with the intent to capture that graceful cinematic or edge of your feet dynamic shot of cows while they're sleeping in the barn at night and are pissed now because the Skydio won't fly at night, then I don't know what to tell you, because I personally don't think that would make for a very good video. A second popular gripe that's not on my list is the range issue. Skydio, I am dying to know how your people were able to maintain connectivity between the drone and any of the controller options at the distances of separation you guys advertise as the normal limits of the Skydio 2's capability. I've flown in wide open areas, far from any obstructions or possible radio interference on the crispest of days, and I have never achieved or seen anyone in the world videosphere come anywhere close to the advertised range limit. But on the other hand, this drone is not huge. Even in those wide open areas, it doesn't have to go very far before it's not visible anymore and you can't hear it at all. And if you've ever had your $1,000 drone go down someplace far away from you and you spend hours looking for it, cursing the manufacturer for whatever defect happened, but of course, knowing in time that it's your own poor judgment that's the problem, that feeling just sucks. The Skydio 2 is designed to track along with you wherever you're going, whatever you're doing, whatever environment you happen to be in, and it is sickening how well it does this. But if it's so far away that you can't even make out where it is, it probably isn't able to see you either. So it's the company's fantastical claim of what the maximum range that bothers me. The Skydio 2 drone itself, for me, flies plenty far enough away for me to get the shots that I really want. Also, there are things that you can do to boost your controller range of your Skydio 2, and if that's something that appeals to you and you want to see an example, you should definitely check out my Skydio with Me episode number 4. So, at long last, let's get started with my list of the top 4 things that I dislike the most about the Skydio 2 camera drone. Number 4, there is no programmable camera control.
Not really true.
What?
That's not exactly correct.
Let me explain.
Fine.
The Skydio 2 controls have several pre-programmed behaviors or maneuvers that are pretty cool. They're called skills. I can detail what all of them are in a different video, but there's one that's called cable. And what cable does is allow you to fly your Skydio 2 to a specific point and position the camera angle and lock that position in as point A. Then you can fly to another position, wherever that may be, and adjust how you want the camera to be situated there, and then lock that position in as point B. Then, when you press go, the drone performs this beautiful, graceful, buttery smooth transition, very cinematic. But the drone transitions between point A and point B only by the most efficient and direct route. So if there's something specific that you want captured during the motion, the odds are that it'll be missed completely.
Yeah,
Shh! Let me finish.
All right.
Skydio. I love that feature. It makes beautiful, slick transitional shots, but having only 2 points makes things difficult for the videographer. I think it would be great if you expanded the cable cam feature so that if you want the camera to stay more pointing in a certain direction in the middle of the A-B transition, you know, to allow like a point C so that you're more likely to keep the subject in the frame. Or maybe allow for as many points as you want, just like, you know, when you're doing computer animation and you're setting camera points, you can do keyframes.
All right, hold up. I can't take it anymore.
Who are you? I'm you, a year later. You're ruining my video. No, you're ruining your video. Because Skydio's added the ability to do this multi-point cable cam keyframe thing that you just described. And do you know what that skill is called? What? Keyframe. The genius wizards at Skydio even figured out how to make the process of going back and editing the course and adding or removing keyframes. It doesn't have to be linear or in a row. You can spot check sections, tweak it a little further so that what you end up with is a perfect pile of powdered sugar, smooth and sweet camera motion that's repeatable as many times as you need. Wow. And do you remember when you tried to shoot this video 10 months ago and took great care to explain exactly what else you wished the cable cam feature would do? That you thought was a very clever and innovative idea for a new feature?
The Skydio can fly in any direction, you know, any orientation, fly backwards, sideways, can't fly upside down, but you don't want that. Let's not get crazy. The Skydio 2 drone will fly itself, point at any, you know, while traveling any direction. I would like to be able to control the direction the drone is facing and the gimbal where it's pointing while the drone is flying somewhere. I mean, what's the point of the fly here function if you have absolutely no control over the drone during that time? That just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I do remember that. Well, there are different modes in the keyframe skill. The genius dreamers at Skydio put an option in the keyframe skill to either perform the sequence 100% autonomously, or in free look mode, the drone pilot can become 100% cameraman. Wow. Manually pitching and panning the camera while the drone flies itself precisely along the path you already set. I think I'm gonna have to get a different number 4 thing I hate. I think you're gonna have to get a different number 4 thing you hate, yes. Number 4 on my list of things that I hate the most about the Skydio 2, which is supposed to be my 3, but I'm still on 4, I guess, is the fact that the return home feature always has the drone coming to you backwards. What? It makes total sense that because the internal radio antennas are in the rear of the drone, then if it's returning to home because of a signal loss, you'll pick up this signal again sooner on your controller. Yeah, but do you remember there was that problem of the drone coming back into range and you wanted to cancel the return function so that you could turn it around and fly back to yourself faster, forward, out of concern of the battery? Yes, and then because I turned it around and the signal was weak, it dropped out again. Yeah, and it turned around again and started flying up again, another 50 feet or whatever. And since it had already gone up the 50 feet before that, it kind of threatened your FAA altitude restriction, didn't it? I was worried about my FAA height restriction, and it started flying backwards more. Well, Now, it is an option to have the Skydio 2 return home facing toward you if you want. And you can set the return speed to over double what it used to. Awesome. And the new standard model of Skydio 2, the Skydio 2 Plus, it has a better internal radio and the antennas are external. They fold out from the front wings, so you don't lose signal just because of the way the drone's facing. Also awesome. And they did one more thing since last year. What's that? They added a custom height ceiling setting so that Skydio 2 won't accidentally breach whatever FAA altitude restriction you've got. Come on. What? That was part of my thing number 2 that I hated. Yeah? Yeah, when I was complaining about the only height limit that could be set was either an 8-foot height floor or not. The 8-foot floor is a good thing. It helps protect the other people who might be on the trail, and it stays above most cars if you find yourself uncomfortably close to the road. The addition of the custom height ceiling is really good, but you articulated really well the first time you shot this video an issue about height settings that they, at the time I'm shooting this video, still haven't really addressed.
The Achilles heel of the Skydio is bare branched trees and power lines, and I happen to know that the utility poles in my area are all 30 feet high. I'd love to be able to set a height floor of 40 feet so that I can do my thing and it can track me whatever, and I don't have to worry about the drone swooping down against my intent and suiciding itself.
They haven't added that? Nope, not yet. So can that be my number 4? Sure. No custom height floor is the 4th biggest issue we both still have with the Skydio 2. Alrighty. Number 4 is done, finally. The number 3 biggest thing that I hate about the Skydio 2 is that when you're using the beacon and the drone is tracking you through the action, it's pretty aggressive. That's a problem? Well, no. It's good that it does its best to keep up with you and stick to the angle that you set for it. But if for whatever reason it loses you visually, and when it switches from visual to GPS tracking, the Skydio 2 has the tendency to abruptly turn away and go careening off in some direction that you're totally not going in. It turns away and wanders through the woods seemingly aimlessly, and you're wondering where the hell it's going, and you start anticipating its potential demise because it feels like it's malfunctioning. Or other times, when it loses sight of you, it shoots way up in the air, like, oh sure, that's where I went. And then from way up there, it still tracks you and is aware of where you're moving, but the Skydio 2 will never pick you up again visually because it's facing the total wrong direction. What is it? I think they might have fixed that. What? I think they might have fixed that. There was this time, just this past December 2021, I did a thing that Skydio really frowns upon, by the way. I went out to a super wide open area to fly with my great new friend Nate, who has a cool YouTube channel, by the way. It's called NK9 FPV. You should definitely check it out sometime. He's a terrific FPV drone pilot. But I digress. I wanted to try an experiment involving firmly securing my Skydio's beacon to Nate's Mavic 2 Pro to see if we could get my Skydio to track it. It took some work because the Skydio 2 isn't really able to recognize anything other than a person or a car, and the Skydio 2's program gives priority to visual tracking over GPS, but eventually we got it to work. The Skydio 2 only had the GPS signal from the beacon. It couldn't recognize or see the Mavic at all. But even though the Skydio only had the GPS signal, wherever the Mavic went, wherever it turned, whatever maneuver it did, the Skydio kept to the beacon in frame almost the entire time. So you think they might have fixed that? Well, I have to wait until the leaves come back out on the trees in the woods to test it out, but based on what I've seen so far, from the most recent update, I'm thinking, yeah, they might have fixed that. So I'm still on 3? Yep, you're still on 3. Yeah. I have an idea. What's that? Why don't you limit the rest of this list of stuff you hate to things that can't be fixed with an app or a firmware update? Yeah, that might work. Yeah. But I don't really know what to say. Can I give it a shot? Yeah. Knock yourself out. Okay, number 3 on the list of things that bothers me the most about the Skydio 2 is that if you ever have to send it in for repairs, make sure you check out episode 3 of My Skydio and Me, by the way. I talk about that a little bit more. They'll tell you what the damage is, they'll tell you how much it costs to repair, but when they send it back, I don't think they ever send you back your drone. Well, maybe they do that in order to shorten the turnaround time for getting you back to flying again as quickly as possible. Well, that may be, but if I ever took my car to a garage for maintenance and paid for the specific repair and everything, if the mechanic tries to send me home in a different car, I don't care if it's the same make and model. If they try to get me a car that isn't mine...
Unless it's a brand new one.
Yes, unless it's a brand new one, yes.
And it's the latest model?
A man can dream, right?
Yes, you certainly can. What's the number 2?
Right. The number 2 thing on the list of things that I hate the most about the Skydio 2 is the gimbal issue.
The gimbal issue.
Yeah. As truly unbelievable as the Skydio 2 is at obstacle avoidance, unlike the Mavic 2 Pro, which will practically saw off the teeny little twig that the propeller is brushing against, when the Skydio 2 has contact with a branch, it seems to unnecessarily try to flip. And if it should land right on the gimbal at all, the gimbal breaks every time. Every time. Skydio, you guys really need to tweak the way the Skydio 2 reacts when a propeller comes into contact with something. Or maybe try to come up with some type of add-on or accessory or something that can snap on, or you can take off the drone that can protect the propellers when it's flying in more branchy areas.
Maybe the flip thing works when the drone is higher, but most people are getting shots when their Skydio 2 is closer to the ground where the obstacles are. The slightest little brush against the propeller and the Skydio 2 goes down immediately. It does an incomplete front flip right on the gimbal, which breaks every single time. So please, guys, you've got to replace the gimbals and make them out of something that's a lot stronger than what you're using now. Aluminum, maybe.
Or carbon fiber, perhaps.
We're serious. If the Skydio 2 was not such a friggin' awesome, amazing drone in virtually every other way,
after only 1 year, I would definitely not still be a Skydio 2 owner anymore.
Nope.
Nope.
But it is really awesome.
It is amazing. Hey, you know what aspect of the Skydio 2 ownership experience is a super frustrating thing?
What? What is it?
That maybe we can use as the number 1 most annoying thing ever about the Skydio 2 that you, Mr. Last Year, wouldn't be aware of?
What is it that you, Mr. Year Later Man, have found to be the number 1 most frustrating thing about the Skydio 2 ownership experience that's most detestable, and that I wouldn't have thought about it yet?
Here it is. The number 1 most frustrating thing about the Skydio 2 is that if you're ever doing a video about things you hate about the Skydio 2 camera drone, by the time you think you're just about finished with it, Skydio, the jerk geniuses that they are
geniuses.
They continue pushing out SCAP and or firmware updates that over the top improves or exactly fixes or introduces whatever it is you wish that your Skydio 2 had or did. And so you have to pretty much continually scrap everything you've done in your video whenever you've got to complain about anything.
That creates a super long delay between your publishing your pilot episode and your episode 2, doesn't it?
It sure does. It makes you worry that those who have already shown their faith and interest in your show after the very first episode, who took the time to comment and show their support by hitting the like and subscribe buttons, that maybe they'll think you lied to them about there even being a series.
Those early supporters probably feel like you spit right in their faces.
Golly, I hope that's not true. And I apologize if that's the way I made you feel.
So I will endeavor to never make the people who have supported this show to have to wait a year before the next release.
Then again, speaking about a drone that you've had for an entire year and you've got experience with it, it kind of makes you a little bit more credible, don't you think?
Maybe, but that's for them to decide, don't you think?
So that wraps up this part of episode 2 of My Skydio and Me, the dislike section of likes, dislikes, and unlikes. Please check out section 3 where he will share the 4 things that he believes, after at least a year of ownership, makes the Skydio 2 most unlike every other drone on the market. Yes, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe and ring bells and they get the idea. And I hope you'll check out the next section.